Namaskar viewers. Hello and welcome to Sansad TV. I'm Teena Jha, your host for this podcast. Today I'm interviewing Ms. Rini Choudhury, author of Roots, which is a compilation of her poems. So that's the book I'm holding in my hand. Recently, she presented the first copy of her book to Honorable Vice President of India, Shri Jagdeep Dhankar. On the professional front, Rini is an Indian Information Service Officer handling media and communication for the Office of the Vice President of India and Chairman, Rajya Sabha. Thanks, Rini, for joining us for this conversation.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Absolute pleasure to have you with us. And, I was immensely delighted to go through this book, the poems that you've written and the emotions that you've put into this book. So I'd love to have a conversation about the journey and how this book came into being. But before that, let's first try and understand how and when did poetry find its way into your life?
Teena, I think at the outset I would say that I write because I read. And my parents actually instilled the love for reading in me at a very young age. And the two, reading and writing, I think went hand in hand. Right. So I remember, earning my first check of 200 rupees for this piece, this short story that was published in Children's World, which was then published by the National Book Trust. So it sort of started with that, and it started with writing short stories. And somewhere along the way, I think I realized that poetry offers probably a little more freedom or flexibility in terms of how I wish to pen down my thoughts. And I'm from Kolkata, so true to the Bengali stereotype, we've grown up on specifically on Tagore's songs and poetry. So we have always been told that there is no mood or season that Tagore hasn't written about. And my mother has taught me Rabindra Sangeet. She's a trained singer herself. So the tune of Tagore's songs has always been in the background somewhere. We've grown up in school learning his poems. So somewhere the idea of what poetry can offer or what it can make you feel has always been around, but it's only somewhere along the journey of growing up that I realized this is something I can use to express myself.
So does that mean when you write poems or any kind of storytelling that you say you're involved in, do you have a specific target audience in mind, or do you just use it as an expression to your inner world?
I think I write for myself because I feel that the act of putting pen to paper somewhere helps me make sense of what I'm thinking. And I'm an overthinker. I tend to have thoughts going around in loops in my head. And I think, media tells us, or otherwise there's that notion that thinking a lot or feeling a lot is often seen as a sense of weakness or a vulnerability. But I think it is this vulnerability that also allows you to say and express yourself far more when you decide to put it down in words. So I write for myself. There are times when the words are in my mind, but I don't have it in me to sort of actually articulate it as I would want to. And then there are times when it comes quite easily. But it is always a great pleasure when someone tells you that something you have written felt relatable to them or it resonated with them. And I think that is where the joy of sharing your writing, your poetry, your words with someone else feels so rewarding.
Absolutely. I have questions for both these situations that you spoke about. I also could relate to a couple of poems that you've mentioned about. I'll also speak about how you find time to actually, pen down your thoughts, because your full-time profession is quite demanding. But coming to the book first, and when I first held the book in hand, I had this question instantly in my mind. The cover looks quite interesting, and so does the title. Right. So is there a personal story behind why you chose the title Roots?
So somewhere I always knew that whenever I decide to put my first book out into the world, I did not know it would be an anthology of poetry, but I knew that whatever I decide to write for the first time would be called Roots. So there are two parts to what you asked me. I think one is the cover and one is the title.
Yes.
So I grew up in Kolkata for my entire childhood, and I shifted base to Delhi after completing my school education. And the sense of leaving a place where you've grown up, where you've been protected and sheltered, and finding your footing in an entirely new place, that didn't happen very easily. It took a while. That change is a process that feels very difficult to me, even now, after all this while. So I think one way of finding your sense of home in a completely new environment for me has been through sending down roots. And roots are something that you would send down in places, yes, but also in people. So when you move out of a very familiar environment, whether that's family or your hometown, and you set up base in a new place or in some kind of a space outside your comfort zone, what keeps you anchored are these connections that you develop with people who then start feeling like home. And when you move from this one safe place that you've nurtured and developed and onward to the next journey, there is some sense of uprooting yourself and moving on to the next place, because that is what makes this process of shifting or changing difficult. So it's this that I meant by roots. And roots can be can tether you to a city, which is what I've spoken about. I've spoken about my love for Delhi. It can be about people, and it can be about different kinds of equations that you develop with different individuals or groups of people over the course of your life, which might have names, which might not have very specific labels, but there's a particular bond that you have cultivated that remains special to each of these equations, which roots you and keeps you in place until you decide to take the next step.
In fact, for thousands of people like us who moved from a different city to Delhi for better education, then stayed here for employment. And when I was reading your first poem, which paints a vivid picture of Delhi, how you begin to like the city, even though, initially it seems quite different to where you belong to, but the fact that gradually you begin to call it home. So the question about the first poem is titled Delhi is, how long have you called the city your home? What is it that you find quite unique about this city?
So Delhi has been home in different, tranches of time. So the first time I came here for my graduation, I was in North Campus. I was in St. Stephen's College for 3 years. And we stayed on campus in residence. And that's a straight dive into a completely different world, because here I had people from different parts of the country speaking very different languages who bring with them very different, music and food, and your world suddenly opens up at one go. So my first brush with Delhi, more than it being about this city, was what it showed me, this sort of new horizon that it opened up for me. And there's of course that whole process of learning who you are or finding your own identity in this new place that you have come to. And I think it's who I was in Delhi that made this special. And back then when we were in college, there was the possibilities, I think, were endless. So we learned to explore Delhi on our own. And I had the good fortune, I think, of coming back to Delhi in 2019, when my professional training academy also turned out to be Delhi. And this time I was in a completely different part of the city. So I spent my graduation days in North Campus, and here I was in Vasant Kunj, and on completely different terms this time. So I feel that I got the best of two very different worlds, very different sets of people, and very different faces of the city. So I have had the chance to look at the city through the lens of being a tourist and of being an insider.
Is that why you say that, and two different experiences perhaps in two different, durations of time, which you describe by writing that Delhi, to begin with, seems like it doesn't belong to anyone. Yes. But the more you know the city, you say it belongs to everyone.
That's true, because I think for most of us, as you mentioned, this is a city that we have learned to call home, having come from an entirely different place.
Yes.
So there is a sense of claim or ownership that we've developed over the city, over a course of time, I think. And there are very small things that I now cherish about the city, which goes far beyond the, the richness of its heritage and, the glamour that it offers and so on and so forth. Because having lived here for a long time now, I can, talk at length about the change of seasons in Delhi. In which season there'll be simal flowers growing, and at what point you will see that giving way to amaltas. So there'll be these, yellow chandeliers all over the city. And about the food in Delhi, there's of course the, the fancy restaurants that we have. But back in college, we started with exploring Chowdi Bazaar and, the food in Old Delhi. And I think for each of us who have, especially for those of us who've learned to love Delhi with some amount of trepidation over time, we have our own favorites, our own corners and our own specialities that we feel are, unique to our bond with Delhi. So, and Delhi also was the city where I actually stayed during the course of the pandemic. So there's a very different sense of perception that we had during those months or the course of that year. So yes, I've learned to call the city home, and I think that's
so I'll definitely ask you about which your favorite spot is, which your favorite food spot in Delhi is. But let's not deviate from the conversation for the moment. We'll stick to the book and the poems. There are 18 in this book. Which one is your favorite? Although I mean, when I read these poems, I realized they cover a whole range of emotions, and they've been written in different periods of time. But which one is more closer to your heart?
That would also be a tough call for me to pick one, because you're absolutely right. They've been written over very different periods of time. So the kind of emotions associated with them have also, I think, there's a sense of change that you might perceive when you're reading it. But one favorite is Only Woman in the Room, because it's a sense of pride as well as a sense of unease that prompted me to write that, because I think in a professional setup, all of us who are women fighting for our space, if I may say so, still in our own fields, that is something that we hold very dear to us, the ability to have our voice heard in a room full of men. But at the same time, that is not what it should be. And it's a poem that I still can't probably explain very articulately, but it remains very special to me. And it's not just an acknowledgement of what we have achieved as professionals in the workplace, but also on the sheer number of women who have made it possible for us to achieve that. Because in our there's immense strength in the women in our families. My mother is a working woman, and I know that what I am today is not just because of her support, but also the way I have seen her hold herself in a public space rather. And then there are the female friendships that I think are the absolute crux of our existence, of our support systems. So it is this very enmeshed network that allows us to thrive and flourish in whatever setting we are put forth, whether it is professional or personal. So in some way, this is also an ode to all of these women and girls who form such an intrinsic part of our lives.
I must confess to you that when I said there are a couple of poems that I could relate to, Only Woman in the Room was one of them, but the most relatable poem that I found was Homecoming. And I think it comes from the common point that both of us have is we didn't belong to Delhi. We came from different cities, found solace in the capital, gradually began to love the city. But there was this feeling of homesickness.
Yes.
And the emotional tapestry that you sort of weave through your emotions, through your words, it aptly describes the journey of someone who comes to this place finds it quite different, faces certain challenges in adapting, but gradually you are comfortable, and this is the place that you begin to love. Were those the emotions that you were trying to convey to the reader also?
Absolutely, but there are a couple of added layers to that. So Homecoming has two aspects in my writing, what I had in mind. One is, of course, the physical sense of coming to a new place. So Delhi, yes, absolutely. And I was very homesick when I came from Kolkata and I came to Delhi. I think for one whole semester I was sniffling and being sulky in different intervals. It took a while to settle down. And another sense of homecoming for me is actually setting down or putting together my own place here, because when I came during college and then again for my professional training, we stayed in hostels on campus, and it was probably around 2022, 3 years ago, that I first had my own accommodation. And my fear about that initially, logistics set aside, was about coming home physically into a certain place, and about sort of making sure that it's a place that welcomes me at the end of the day. So putting that together was a labor of love, yes, because every little thing there is something that has a sense of thought and understanding that has gone into that. But at a very personal level, it also felt that this is a home to come back to, which I have assembled, literally put together with my own finances, my own ability, and without any external help. And that, I think, was an immensely challenging period, that transition from the very secure walls of a hostel to my own home. So that, I think, is one very important aspect of homecoming for me. Being comfortable about coming home to an empty house at the end of the day, where it does not feel empty, but it feels just right to call it my own personal space.
And I'm so glad to be having this conversation with you, not because your writings are quite relatable to me, but also for the fact that by far I've interviewed a lot of full-time authors, and whenever they write, what they have told me is they just switch off their public life. Yeah. They confine themselves to their creative spaces, or maybe there's somebody who say is an academician and is writing on the go. So whatever is happening in class, just putting it down in the form of a book. Right. But you're someone who has a completely different professional life. There's very limited scope for creativity in what you're doing professionally. But personally, how do you let your emotions flow this beautifully? How do you balance both your lives so well?
I wish I would love the opportunity to have a dedicated time to write. What we have talked about, or what we hear about, having your own space and your writing table, maybe a separate little cottage somewhere secluded where you can sit and write. But yes, so I have a full-time profession, which I think I'm lucky to have similarities in terms of the kind of work I do with my creative bent, if I may say so. Even though the kind of writing or the kind of words I deal with are not very creative in its regular sense, but it allows me to be continuously engaged with the written word, the spoken word, and all of that. That aside, I read at every available opportunity. So I have a physical copy of a book or a Kindle in my bag at all available, all the time, which I pull out at all available moments, whether I'm traveling, if I'm waiting somewhere. I do not turn up anywhere without a book. And or I have Audible, somewhere playing at the back. And I think writing is something that there's a sense of compulsion to it, that one fine day it will just seem as though I have had enough and the words have been sort of there at the base of my throat for a while, and now I am required to put it down. So it's not a question of inspiration or even motivation. It's just that sense of needing to express myself and I think that's
so now listening to you, I'm not surprised why you describe yourself as an avid reader, as a hoarder of books in your social media profiles. So tell us and our viewers, what are the kind of books or authors that you are usually drawn to?
I am more partial to fiction over non-fiction at its broadest classification, because I've grown up reading fiction. So especially even within fiction, I tend to prefer Indian authors, because I feel that a lot of our Indian authors have not received the kind of attention that they should. Booker authors, Booker-winning authors aside. I have also grown up reading Satyajit Ray, Ruskin Bond, and those are writings that continue to stay with me. A lot of Indian authors that we have now, or translated works that have been made available, are things that I make it a point to pick up. There are books that deal with a lot of very topical issues, political or otherwise, that are brilliantly put forth in the form of a story, which otherwise might seem difficult to digest. And I'm also partial to writing by women, whether that's contemporary, global fiction or otherwise. So historical fiction is also a favorite area, because again it allows me to delve into a lot of facts or very intense information or emotions without weighing me down, where I can know things beyond my understanding without it feeling as though I'm being hammered with facts or statistics.
Now that you're a published author, I'd like to also speak to you about some of the challenges that persist for especially the new writers. In this digital era and with the emergence of technologies like AI, how challenging is it to make yourself relatable and resonate with the audience, especially the younger readers?
I think there are two aspects to it. The positive side is that a lot of these digital platforms or social media handles, they allow authors to engage with young readers who might not want to otherwise delve into a full-length work, but might be interested in exploring this writing in bits and pieces, provided the author in question is willing to customize their content accordingly. So it would involve using probably more visual material, dividing their content into very bite-sized chunks, so that readers can come and engage with it just for the duration that appeals to them. And that is the case as far as I see on Instagram, especially where poetry is concerned, or even essays are concerned. Substack or regular newsletters are another format that authors or writers are choosing to engage with their target readers. But the negative side is that the same technologies, especially AI, which you mentioned, has sort of posed the problem of contradicting the very idea of creativity, because art or visual arts or writing were considered to be domains which are very quintessentially creative, and they require a human mind to produce. And now, as a lot of trends on social media show, or the use of AI in workplace has shown, that the need for good writing perhaps has been contradicted to some extent. But if I had to answer this, I would say that routine writing to some extent might be completed successfully by AI or by large language models, but producing a piece or putting together a set of words which appeals at a very personal level to the reader remains a very human concept. Certainly. Because that is the core of writing that appeals to us, that you feel that the author has replicated your exact emotions in some other place or time, but this seems to be exactly what you are feeling in your heart and mind. And to produce that effect in your reader is something that I do not think AI can achieve, at least in the near future.
Couldn't agree more, because you know, when I was reading your poems, I could relate to several of these because the emotions were the same. Right. So even if their technology can match the words here and there, perhaps that emotion will always be missing. Although we are now at the fag end of the program, but I'll take the opportunity and the liberty to ask you about your favorite spot in Delhi. There's little time and we can perhaps deviate from our conversation. And just curious to know about what you like to explore about Delhi. What is your favorite spot that you hang out with when you're with friends?
So, you know, this favorite spots also have changed over the course of time that I've spent here. I've been on a lot of heritage walks in Delhi in recent years, and that remains a very, you know, preferred way to engage with these heritage sites, because you get a new you know, understanding of what they offer. But my favorite place, hands down, is Lodhi Garden, for one very particular reason, which appeals to the history buff in me and also to the reader. So there is a community of readers that comes together at Lodhi Garden once every week, either on a Saturday or a Sunday, depending on the season. And they just come together in front of the Bada Gumbad and they claim that public space, again, that sense of ownership in a city. And they sit and read. So you, unlike other book clubs, you are not required to discuss a book. You are not required to engage with your fellow readers. There's absolutely no compulsion to speak. So this is a group of people who come together time and again, you know, some give or take a few as per their schedule, simply bound by that shared love for books. And there are a lot of people who don't read, who knit, they paint, they play with the dogs. And you know, Lodhi Garden again has a lot of things going on. There are children who are frolicking about all over the place. There are photo shoots that are happening. People are having picnics. So it's a very vibrant place in general. And then there's a group of readers just sitting there silently, sprawled about, you know, on the grass all over the place, and reading, you know, dozing off when it's a sunny Sunday morning. And I have been part of this community for over a year now. It's going to be, the community will turn 2. My engagement with it has been, I think, over 1.5 years. So that has made Lodhi a very, a place that is very close to my heart, because again, for someone who has learned to call this city home, this group has also given me people and individuals who have come to be a very, you know, special part of my life. So that's always a win. And apart from that, I think food in Delhi is something I would come back to over and over again, because this is also something we discovered during our college days, where we had a particular curfew time to return to, but we still had to finish our share of kebabs in Old Delhi before we headed back. So it's been a very mixed bag in terms of, you know, what I love in this city.
You know, I've been to Lodhi Garden a couple of times, but you know, never seen that perspective. So thank you for showing us that side of the Lodhi Garden as well. I'm sure viewers who are watching us, those who can, will go to Lodhi Garden and explore all of what Rini has said. Also be part of these heritage walks, because there's always so much to learn and explore about that place. But it's been an absolute pleasure interacting with you, not just about your book, but about your journey from Kolkata to Delhi, and how you've gradually accepted the city as your home, and the experience that you're now gaining here in the national capital. Wish you well for your future as well, and I hope that you write more books so that we can continue our conversation in future as well. Thank you once again for joining us for this wonderful and engaging conversation, and thank you viewers very much for your time as well.